Hello, hello. Hello everyone, very good morning to all of you. So friends, welcome back to Anthropology PYQ series. Let's try to decode every question and let's master every concept. So friends, as a part of our lecture series, so we have almost completed more than around 34 questions. Now we are moving towards 35th question, and the question of the day that is there with us is, look at the question. So the question is, what are the different types of caste mobility in India? And highlight the various factors responsible for it. So this is the question that is there with us. So can you able to simply highlight the section from which the question has been given? So from which part of the Anthropology paper 2 has been given? The question has been given. So it has been given from unit 3. So where you have caste system. So in caste system, you can see a specific topic systematically talking about the caste mobility and the future of the caste. So this topic, as well as in unit 5.3, you will have a particular topic known as social mobility. So this we can have the relevance from the both the sections. So unit 3 as well as unit 5.3 of your Anthropology paper 2. So now let's try to understand this particular concept in a systematic fashion. Isn't it? So shall we proceed? Those who have joined in online, you can just give an indication that you have joined. So that's how. Let's proceed further and let's try to understand the concept in a systematic fashion. So to understand this particular concept, so how you should proceed means, in the very introduction, what you have to do, systematically mention about what is caste mobility. Mention that caste mobility is a type of social mobility where there would be change in the position or status of the caste, either upwards or downwards. So that's basically social caste mobility. So then in the introductory, in the body portion, so two things you have to mention. So in the first part of the body, you have to mention about different types of caste mobility, and the second part of your body should talk about various factors that are responsible for it. So this is one thing, so that you must and should do. Then furthermore, how you should proceed, in the conclusion portion, you can systematically highlight the future of the caste system or the dynamic nature of the caste system, and there you can just conclude the answer. Is that it clear? So that's how you should proceed with the approach. Now let us try to understand the concept in a systematic fashion. Right? So furthermore, if you see, so how we can start the discussion. So let's start the discussion from understanding the basic, simply quickly. So understanding what is society onwards. So anthropologically, when we see, so how society can be defined. So anthropologically, society can be defined as group of a union of various social groups and social institutions. Do you remember this? Social institutions. So there are so many social groups and social institutions that are there in the society. So amongst that, if you see a group of individuals who have common goal and common objective, so they are nothing but social groups. So amongst that, so caste is one such kind of social group that is there with us. Is that it clear? Now, when we see from the perspective of caste, so how can we define the caste? So that's another important aspect. So if you see, so caste, generally, caste is a hereditary, it's a hereditary endogamous group. Hereditary endogamous group. So which has a lot of characteristics. So let's try to understand them. So in a very basic understanding, you should remember that caste is a hereditary endogamous group. So what is this endogamous group means? Endogamy means the practice of marrying within one's own group. So generally we can see that a particular caste people will be marrying within themselves, isn't it? So that practice of marrying within one's own group is nothing but the caste. So endogamy. So that's one thing. So let's try to understand this in a further manner. Now, when we see from the perspective of caste, so caste has different characteristics. What are the different characteristics of the caste? So there we can see that. So first, all the caste members will have a common name. So this you can see, isn't it? Can you able to realize that every particular caste group will have a common name? Then furthermore, if you see, every caste group will have a common traditional occupation. This is another important characteristic. Traditional occupation is something. So we should see. Now, every caste will have a common, common culture. So that's another important aspect. So the way of life. This is another important aspect, right? So caste is a hereditary endogamous group which is characterized by a common name, common traditional occupation and common culture. So furthermore, to all this, we have some other things that we should remember. So which is caste is relatively rigid. Caste is relatively rigid in the matters of mobility. In the matters of mobility. So this is another important term that we should understand. Mobility means movement from one position of the ladder in the social hierarchy to other position, other status in the social stratification. So this is one thing. So this is where our basic thing lies with. Is that clear? Now, so all the castes will have a kind of distinctiveness of the status. So that's another important thing that we should remember. So further characteristic is distinctiveness of status. This would be further there. So about all of them, so finally what we will have, so finally we can have one another important thing that, so it forms a common homogeneous community. So forms a common homogeneous community. So this is what basically how we can define in a comprehensive way what is caste is. Now, is that clear for you all? So I hope you are clear to this basic concept. So what is caste and what is the basic understanding characteristics of the caste. So this you should understand before we proceed towards further aspects, right? Now let's try to further understand and let's try to further move towards the various other aspects. So once again, very good morning to all. So those who have joined later. Right. So I hope this terminology is clear to you. So mobility means movement from one part of the one group to another group, or one from one status to other status. So that's one important aspect, right? So let's try to explore more. So in the body, what is the chief demand of the question? So chief demand of the question or chief theme is, it is related to the caste mobility. So what is caste mobility in a simple fashion to say? Caste mobility is nothing but it's a form of social mobility where either the entire group of the entire caste will change its status in the social stratification, or a particular person or a particular selective members will change their thing. So that's how there is a possibility of movement in the social stratification. So traditionally, if you see generally, so we have different castes. So traditionally, if you see, so what are the different types of castes that were available for us? So from Varna system, if you see, so we have four castes. So if you see this thing, you should further understand. So Brahmins at the top of the ladder, Kshatriyas at the second stage of the ladder, then Vaishyas at the third stage of the ladder. Then we have our Shudras. So apart from this, like those like untouchable. So those who have not included is untouchable. So we should not use the word untouchable, but simply, so these are others. So that's how. So now in this case, if a Vaishya person, let's say for example, there is possibility that they may move upwards in the ladder of social stratification, right? So in the similar fashion, there is possibility that Kshatriyas may assume the Vaishya status. So in this fashion, so social mobility, that means caste mobility takes place. Caste mobility occurs in this way. And other way is that, so there is possibility that, so sometimes within a particular thing, let's say for example, Kshatriya is a group of castes. So we can have multiple castes. So there could be multiple castes among Kshatriyas. So now what may happen here is that, so people may move within this also. So let's say caste group 1, 2, 3, 4 like that. Different castes are there under Kshatriya section. So then this group, this caste may move like this caste may move like this. So this is one another type of mobility. So like that, based on the nature of the mobility of the caste. So we have different types of the castes. So let's try to understand what are the different mobilities and different types of caste mobility. Right friends, so if you are clear with different types, so you can just simply type in the chat box. So what are the different types of caste mobilities? So that you know. So type in the chat box. So let's see. So what different types of caste mobilities that you are aware of. So first, if you see types of caste mobilities in a systematic fashion, if we want to do, so one important thing is that, so we can have is types of caste mobility. So based on the nature, so we can have different types. We can just highlight different types of caste mobility. So what are they? So first, when we see, so we can have vertical mobility, that's one thing. Non-vertical mobility, that would be one another thing. Vertical mobility, this is one type of caste mobility. Then non-vertical mobility, this is another important thing, another important type. Then we will have cultural mobility. This is another important type. Then other types of mobilities. So this is how broadly we can categorize them. So caste, in caste we can say there is possibility of the movement of people from the lower caste group may be moving towards upwards, or upper caste groups may be moving towards the lower group. So based on this, we can say there is a type of mobility known as vertical mobility. So there are two types of vertical mobilities. So what are those two types? So one type is basically known as upward mobility. Upward mobility. And other type is known as downward mobility. Upward mobility and downward mobility. Then in non-vertical, so we can have further two types. Non-vertical means, so where you can see movement within the same strata, but the nature will change, but some aspects will change. So there we can have things like horizontal mobility. So some of you might texting. So horizontal mobility. So vertical, horizontal, intra mobility. Very good. So Pragnya texted. So when she is texting that, anuloma, pratiloma. Good. So that is another anuloma, pratiloma are types of marriages. So through anuloma marriages, we can have the social mobility. So in the factors we can see types of marriages. So that's one thing. So horizontal mobility. So then intergenerational mobility. So this would be other important type of the non-vertical mobility. I hope you can catch it. Now, when we see from the cultural mobility point of view, so in cultural mobility, we have some of the basic types. So one important type of cultural mobility that we can have is the process of Sanskritization. Then other important type. So opposite to Sanskritization, we'll be having a term that is known as de-Sanskritization. Sanskritization and de-Sanskritization. So this we can further call by another name, but it's not famous, tribalization. Tribalization. So this is a form of cultural mobility that we can understand. So then we have other types, though they were not types, but they will make the changes in the caste mobility, but still we can consider them under one type of cultural mobility. So what are they? So they are basically known as the things like westernization. So westernization and or modernization. So they further help in the process of the caste mobility. Westernization and modernization. So these two things are not purely the types of caste mobility, but they help in, they aid in the caste mobility. Then what are the other types of this? So other types, basically, one, we can have the type like structural mobility. Structural mobility. And the second one, you can have political mobility. So like this, we have different types of caste mobility. So they are all basically nothing but different types of caste mobilities. Is that clear? Now, let's try to understand these things in a systematic fashion. Now, what is the vertical mobility means? We have understood. So there is a social stratification. Social stratification means what? Division of the society into different layers. So now caste is one of the base for the social stratification. So there, let's see, for example, so when we see at the high status, so Brahmins will be there in the top position of the social strata. Then Kshatriyas are at the second position. Kshatriyas. Then we will have Vaishyas at the next stage of the ladder. Then we will have Shudras. And apart from that, the out. So this is the basic thing to say. This is how society has been divided into different layers. So you can have it. Now, what is vertical mobility means? Due to various reasons. So reasons could be anything. So due to various reasons, a caste group belonging to lower social strata will try to move towards either up or in. So if Shudras, they are moving towards the Vaishyas, or if they are moving towards the Kshatriyas, or Kshatriyas are moving to climb the status of Brahmins. So then this type of mobility is basically known as upward mobility. Upward mobility of the caste. In the similar fashion, if Brahmins are downgrading their status, or the Kshatriyas are climbing the status of Vaishyas, or Vaishyas moving towards the Shudras group. So then this would be an example for downward mobility. Downward mobility. So this is how, so one thing is that we can have upward or downward mobility of the caste. So that's one important aspect. So then as I have already said you, so if we take up a particular group, so let's take the Vaishyas. So amongst the Vaishyas, there are different subcastes. So let's say, for example, a subcaste belonging to Vaishya, so if it is moving from one position to another subcaste, so if it is changing its identity like this, so here it's moving in within the same caste, so subcastes, so groups are changing, subgroups are changing their status. So this is how, so this is an example for horizontal mobility of the caste. That means in normal parlance to say, for example, there are so many other backward castes, OBCs are there. So when a OBC caste, when it tries to just takes up our status of other caste belonging to OBC group, so then that is known as horizontal. So here, so let's say for example, general category, backward classes, other backward classes, RSCs and STs. So when, for example, so people belonging to SCs, when they are climbing the status of other backward class, or other backward classes are climbing the status of the general category, open category classes, castes, that would be an example for the upward and mobility, upward and downward mobility. So in this fashion, we can systematically understand, so different one, we can understand the vertical mobility. I hope you are clear with this. So this is one possible combination. Now further thing, if you see, so we have the horizontal mobility and the downward mobility that we have understood. Horizontal mobility, intergenerational mobility. What is this intergenerational mobility? So let's say, for example, within a family, so father is there, so father's occupation was a traditional occupation. So then the son, so due to education and all those things, son might not follow the same traditional occupation of that particular caste. So then in that case what happens? So son may deviate towards the other occupation. So here what happens means the particular person belonging to the second generation of the family is changing its character. So that's how, so he'll be changing, he'll be moving out of his occupation. So this changes the nature of the caste. So that's how intergenerational mobility means. So people belonging to different generations will follow different occupations or follow different characteristics of the caste. So that's how intergenerational mobility occurs. Is that clear? I hope you are able to follow it. Furthermore, when we see what is cultural mobility means when we try to emulate or when we try to imbibe or when we try to acquire the cultural characteristics of other castes. That is basically known as cultural mobility. And under that we have one thing, that is Sanskritization. So what is Sanskritization? Sanskritization, in fact, it's a type of upward mobility in the social ladder. So now you see, when a Shudra person tries to emulate and imbibe the characteristics of cultural characteristics of Shudras or Vaishyas or Kshatriyas or Brahmins. So here we can understand this is a type of Sanskritization. So upward movement in the ladder. So that is Sanskritization. Can you able to catch that? Now to explain this, so we have a scholar. So the name of the scholar is M.N. Srinivas. So have you heard about M.N. Srinivas? So M.N. Srinivas was the scholar that whom we have to recollect. So M.N. Srinivas was an Indian anthropologist. What he has done? So M.N. Srinivas systematically studied about the Coorgs of Karnataka. Coorgs of Karnataka. So he systematically studied this people. So where after studying this community, he has written a book that is on the name of Religion and Society Among the Coorgs of South India. So this is one case study that you should remember. So So what is that? So the book, what book he has written? So he has written a book that is named as Religion and Society. Religion and Society among Coorgs of South India. This was the name of the book. So in this particular book, so he systematically highlighted how the Coorgs have imitated the practices of Brahmins. So where Coorgs were basically, they belong to they are Kodavas. So the traditional occupation, generally they were having the traditional style of living. So now, so what has happened? So here, so Coorgs are Kodavas. We will call this is another name for the Coorgs in the local areas. So Kodavas, so they started systematically imbibing, or what we can say, they climbed the Kshatriya status by adapting some of the Brahmanical rituals as well as the vegetarianism and teetotalism. So that's one another important thing. So Coorgs, they climbed Kshatriya status. So they try to emulate the Brahmanical practices like teetotalism, vegetarianism and all those things. Then they climbed the Kshatriya status and they just had this. So this is where, so what, so in a simple fashion, so they moved in the social ladder. So this process, he explained it as Sanskritization. Sanskritization. So he introduced this concept. So it is furthermore to say an upward movement in social hierarchy. I hope you could be able to follow this. Upward movement in the social hierarchy. So where a particular caste will try to emulate and imbibe and imitate the practices of the higher caste group. So let's say for example, so when Coorgs adapted the Brahmanical ideology, when the Coorgs adapted the vegetarianism kind of food, when the Coorgs adapted the teetotalism, teetotalism means abstaining from consumption of the alcohol. So when they have done that, so they themselves elevated their status. So Sanskritization with this, what happens means it elevates, basically elevates the social status, elevates the status of caste. So thus they will move up in the social stratification. So that's what the basic social stratification, sorry, the Sanskritization is all about. So they will try to imitate or imbibe or emulate the cultural characteristics. So this is what happens. So try to remember this. So this is basically one example that we have for the process of entire Sanskritization. So this case study so has been given by or done by our M.N. Srinivas. So you should mention such kind of case studies. So this is one case study that you can remember in this context. Is that clear for you all? Shall we proceed further? So, when we further see from the perspective of the other important case study, so what we can understand. So, there is another important scholar or village studies. In village studies, we have another important scholar known as Robert L. Hardgrave. So, Robert L. Hardgrave systematically studied. So, his name was Robert L. Hardgrave. So, what he has done, he has systematically studied the Nadar community, Nadars of Tamil Nadu. I am not talking about Nayars, so Nadars of Tamil Nadu. So, Nadar community. So, what he found? So, he found and he explained about different process. So there, when we see from the Nadars point of view, so the traditional occupation of the Nadars was toddy tapping. Toddy, it's a type of the local liquor that will be available in the villages. So Nadar communities' traditional occupation was the toddy tapping. Traditional occupation was toddy tapping. Now, what in the mean course of time has got means in his observations. So, due to some of the factors like modern education, access to modern education, access to modernization of the society, and further development of entrepreneurial spirits among the youth, so the traditional occupation has got shifted. And there what has happened, so there was a shift in the occupation to trade, to education sector, as well as to entrepreneurism. So that's where, so there was shift in, they shifted towards the other occupations like say education, entrepreneurship, and trade. So this is how, so they have changed their nature. So when we see, so one particular peculiar characteristic of the caste is getting changed. So they will have common occupation, isn't it? So now what has happened? So here the structure of the caste has been changed. So that means it's a kind of mobility, isn't it? Can you able to catch that? So that's one important aspect. So this is an example which we can quote for cultural and structural mobility. Cultural and structural mobility. This case study you can use to explain the cultural and structural mobilities. Particularly you can use it for structural mobility because the structure of the caste has got changed. So the occupation has got changed. So this is where you should remember, and this would be one important case study that you can remember. So case study 2. So remember, this is another important aspect. Can you able to remember this now? Now, furthermore, so if you see, so further case studies which we can incorporate are where you can use the case studies means, so we can use the Andrew Betalli's, so SRIRAM village case study. So this could be another important aspect. So there, so next case study, that is like Andrew Betalli is one another scholar. Andrew Betalli is one another important scholar. So who has systematically done studies with respect to a village in Tamil Nadu that is known as SRIRAM village. So SRIRAM village study. SRIRAM village study. So in SRIRAM village of Tamil Nadu, so what Andrew Betalli has observed, that he systematically observed a kind of a movement of the caste. So where the lower castes improved their status through the economic upliftment. So lower castes have systematically uplifted themselves economically. So when they have economically uplifted themselves, so their status in the society also got elevated. So this is how, so this became a typical example for the upward movement of the caste mobility. So that's one important thing. So here he has written, Andrew Betalli, after studying the SRIRAM village, has written a book that is basically known as, so Caste, Class and Power. Name of the book was the Caste, Class and Power. This was the name of the book. In this particular book, he systematically highlighted this case study. So where he quoted, so how lower castes, elevated their status, elevated social status through economic upliftment. So this was the basic subject matter of this particular book. So that's one important example that we can have. So here what they have done, so systematically within the same caste group, so their status got elevated, social status got elevated. So this is a typical example for horizontal mobility. This is a typical example for horizontal mobility, so that you can understand and remember. So this is another important case study. So you can have this as case study 3. Use this for explaining the horizontal mobility. So this is one important aspect. Furthermore, you can have another important case study given by Yogendra Singh. So Yogendra Singh systematically studied the Green Revolution tribes and Green Revolution castes. So Yogendra Singh's study. So this is the last and thing that you can mention. So Yogendra Singh is another important scholar. So what he has studied, he studied about Green Revolution castes. There are certain castes which are named as Green Revolution castes because these castes got flourished during the period of Green Revolution and they become dominant in their particular regions. So such kind of castes who got benefited because of the Green Revolution, peasant societies, and they have elevated their status in the social ladder. So they are known as Green Revolution castes. I hope you can catch that. So now, so what has happened means, so he has written a book. The name of the book was Modernization of Indian Tradition. So that's the name of the book that is written by our Yogendra Singh. So the book was Modernization of Indian Tradition. Modernization of Indian Tradition. So where he systematically identified certain caste groups which have elevated that status from peasant status to the dominant caste status. So that was one thing that he observed. So what was the observation? Observation was, so elevation of status, elevation of the status from peasant caste groups to dominant castes. So this is another important aspect. So they have elevated themselves to this level. So that is another thing, observation of this. So what were the caste groups they were involved in this? Examples of the caste groups. So who involved in this? So you can see, so Jats from the North India, so Haryana region, so Jats of North India. Then we have the Patels from the western part of India like Gujarat. So that is one other thing. Patels of Gujarat, or you can say western part of the India. And we have our Marathas in the Maharashtra, in the central part of India. So Marathas of Maharashtra. So what amongst them, if you see, so there was a kind of elevation of the status from the peasant communities to the dominant caste group. So this was a typical example for structural mobility. This was a typical example for the structural mobility. So this you should understand. Right? So what has happened there? So Green Revolution. With Green Revolution, agricultural modernization has occurred. So this agricultural modernization, what it has done? So it helped in production of economic surplus. So this economic surplus, this further led them to have a kind of ascertaining some political power. So the political power, when they ascertained themselves, they had emerged themselves as a kind of dominant caste. Can you able to catch that? So now this is how Green Revolution, like they raised themselves from the peasant communities to the dominant castes in their particular locality. So this is another important example which you can remember for the structural mobility. So structure that has been changed. So this you can remember as case study 4. So like this, at least 1 or 2 case studies you should mention, so that it gives more authenticity to your answers. So as we are trying to master every concept, so I am trying to explain and bring in the relevance of all other case studies and all other concepts also. You don't need to write everything which we are studying here. So at least 2 case studies you should mention. Right? So that's how we have different types of caste mobilities that are there here. So I hope I could able to communicate with you properly. So now are you clear with the different types of caste mobilities? Types of caste mobilities, are you clear now? Shall we proceed towards the other part of the question? So those who are online, you can just give your answers. So this is different types of caste mobility. So you should understand that. So apart from that, we have another type of mobility, that is our political mobility. What is this political mobility? Political mobility means it's a type of movement of the caste group from one status to another status based on the political aspects. So due to, let's say for example, any political policy or like political mobilization. So things from reservations and all such kind of things. So we'll have that. So furthermore, when we see, so what are the factors that are responsible for caste mobility? So now you type the factors that are responsible for caste mobility. Let's say how many of you can remember the factors responsible for caste mobility. So mention them in your chat box. So factors responsible for caste mobility. So mention them. Factors responsible for caste mobility. What do you think? Why caste mobility occurs? What are the factors that will affect it? So try to mention them in the chat box. Now, did we get any response? So let's see. So, very first factor that we can see from the perspective of the factors that are responsible for caste mobility is, first thing that you can have is that, so we can systematically divide them into different aspects also, like let's say socio-economic factors or political factors or like the legislative factors or all those things, but let us try to summarize all of them at one point of view. Okay, we are getting responses like social, economic, political factors. Okay, good Pragya. So this is one way of classifying the different factors. What are the social factors? What are the political factors? What are the economic factors? That matters for us. So when we see, so certain factors, like let's say for example, so in the modern times we have got access to modern education. So this is one important factor, access to modern education. So when different caste groups, particularly the lower caste groups, when they have got access to the modern education, so what has happened means they have got a type of awareness amongst themselves about their own rights and about their own activities. So slightly they have educated themselves and then they try to elevate their status so in the society. So access to education is one factor, particularly modern education is one factor that has elevated the status of the caste group. So this is one thing. Then if we talk from economic perspective, so economically when you see, so there was a kind of systematic diversification of the economic opportunities. So in 1991 we have got the economic liberalization also. So economic liberalization and economic diversification that further opened the vistas for new occupational sources. So this economic liberalization and economic diversification has paved way for change in the structural mobility. So this is how you can remember. The another important factor is economic diversification. So that means the modes of subsistence has changed. So when the modes of subsistence changed, so traditional occupation got changed. So this created changes in the structure of the caste. So that further led to change in the structure of the caste. So that's further a type of mobility, isn't it? Can you able to catch that? Now, then we have other important factors like, let's say, industrialization is another important factor that was responsible. So how industrialization? So along with industrialization, we have urbanization. We can have industrialization and urbanization. So these are two important factors. When things got industrialized, so people belonging to different caste groups, they started working as the industrial laborers, and they have systematically changed their status. So that's how it happened. So modernization. So modernization coupled with modern education always opened new vistas for the change in their basic aspects. So that's how their culture changed, their occupation changed, and their status also changed. So this is what the caste mobility is all about. So that's one important aspect. Then furthermore, if you see, so we have some other factors like westernization and secularization. Westernization and secularization, these were another important factors. So Western ideas or westernization has created a kind of scientific rationality amongst the lower castes, where they systematically tried to elevate in the ladder. So that's another important factor, right? So westernization and secularization. So furthermore, if you see, so we have various processes, like various aspects like Sanskritization and tribalization. Sanskritization and tribalization. This is another important factor. So these are this is like, so the processes of socio-cultural change that we can say. So this is another important. So when they have saw like other caste groups, they are changing their identity, so they also got motivated and they also started changing their identity. That's one important process. Is that clear? So any other factors that you can text? So text in the chat box. So whatever you have written or whatever you feel, they are responsible for it. So don't simply listen, so you can chat and you can text so that your points also could be incorporated in the discussion, right? So do it now. Let's see. So furthermore, what has happened? So there was a kind of traditionally, if you see the concept of things like ritualistic importance used to be given. Ritualistic importance played vital role in the traditional societies. But now the ritualistic importance has slightly got replaced by importance to the wealth. So those who have good concentration of wealth, they have given good importance. So that's where people started fetching towards and focusing towards more concentration of the wealth. So this further helped, this factor helped in the caste mobility. So this is one important factor. So economic factors like replacement of ritual significance by concentration of the wealth. So can you able to catch that? So those who possess more wealth, so they'll get the muscle power, and those who possess muscle power, they'll get the political power. Those who possess the muscle power, money power, and the wealth, so they becomes the dominant caste. And that's how, so all the caste groups tend to achieve that kind of status. So that is one way of caste mobility, right? Very good. So we have got another important thing, modernization. Good. So we have incorporated the point modernization. So Okay, modernization. So coupled with these things, so urbanization, these things, so we can also mention one another factor. So modernization, very good. Modernization and access to modern education. So this is one another important factor responsible for it. So social reforms, very good. So this is another important things we can have it. So when we see in the modern India, there were so many reformistic as well as revivalistic movements. So reformistic movements helped in various aspects, like think about temple entry movement and like all such kind of things. So self-respect movement, all those things. So reformistic movements and progressive policies, they were one important factors. So reformistic movements and progressive policies. So this was another important aspect that was responsible for the caste mobility, isn't it? Then what further you have texted? Social reform, so reformistic movements, good. So influence of social media, caste mobility is seeing others. So we can see the social media is also one of the factor. So media and social media, so we can have it. So apart from that, we have some major factors also. So we have some constitutional safeguards and political affirmative actions. So this is another important factors, like constitutional safeguards. Constitutional safeguards. So if you see in Article 14, Article 15 and Article 16, so there were some certain special provisions that have been given. Article 16.1a, 16.1b, 16.1, 16.1, 2, 3, 4. So we have certain specific provisions for specific sections. So there what you can see, and apart from this, certain political affirmative actions. Political affirmative actions means, simply to put, they are nothing but a type of word. We can use it like things like reservations, caste-based reservations. Either it could be in education, either it could be in employment, or it could be in further aspects. So furthermore, so there are certain things particularly given for some particular sections. So this further helped in movement either upwards or downwards. So think about the Patidar movement, think about the Marathi agitation, think about the Jat reservation Andolan. So all of them, they were a type of things that were driven out of this kind of thing. So they wanted themselves to be placed under the OBC category. So they have been uplifted to the open category status. So in the central list, so now they wanted them to just downgrade themselves to the OBC category, because originally they were having the peasant background. There was credential in their argument also, but thing is that now they have been elevated and they are surplus and they are performing better. So why should they be downgraded? So that's the point of contention from the government side. So let's see, so what happens in that. So that's one another important thing. So furthermore, so influence of the social media, yes, we have done with that. So like this, there were so many factors. So there, further thing that you can have is like ingrain of the socialistic ideas. And spread of this. So socialistic ideology means like striving for the equality, egalitarianism, and establishment of there's no like equal concentration of the wealth. So such kind of aspects. So further strengthened the movements in the castes. So that's another important kind of factor. So like this, so you can just mention any of these factors and you can explain them with some of the examples. So this is how you can conclude the answer. So this is how you can write the body portion of the answer, right? So in the conclusion portion, so you can systematically highlight the future of the caste system. So you can say traditionally caste has been believed as a rigid group, whereas if you see in the modern times, so caste is not a static entity, it is slightly getting dynamic. So the nature of the caste is slightly changing, so with the evolution of the time. So that's where, so being a rigid static entity, it is being slightly changed into a dynamic entity. So that's how you can say, and you can talk about some of the further futuristic aspects, and you can conclude the answer. Is that clear for you all? So this is how you should address this particular question. I hope mostly you have understood the demand of the question, and you have understood the concept in a systematic fashion. Right, friends? So these are the various factors, and these were the various case studies. Remember Yogendra Singh's case study on the Green Revolution castes. So Andrew Betley, one of the famous anthropologists who worked on village studies. So Sripuram village study. So then the Robert L. Hargraves Nadars of Tamil Nadu case study. So then we had like Srinivas Coorgs of Karnataka case study. So he pitched about the concept of Sanskritization. So then furthermore you can talk about, we have understood about these types of mobilities. So these are different types of caste mobility that we can have. So that's where let's try to wind off the discussion. So any more further doubts for anyone? So hope we are done with the concept in a very comprehensive manner. So this is how you can address. So those who have not written the answers, so please try to write the answers again and again. I am saying, so if you write, then only you will flourish. So try to remember this, whether it is right or wrong, whether you are accurate or not accurate, whether you are perfect or imperfect. So do not worry about that. So only you have to put your efforts. So do not fail to put your efforts. So start putting your efforts. That's all my final advice to you all. So let's try to wind off the discussion. Let's meet tomorrow at 11:30 a.m. again with another important question. So let's sign off for the day. So thank you all for joining me with this session. So those who have liked the video, you can just, those who have watching the video, you can like the video and you can subscribe to the channel also. So thank you all for joining.